The porch creaked beneath my weight as I settled into the old rocking chair, its rhythm as familiar as the pulse in my wrist. The Kentucky sun was melting into the horizon, casting long amber shadows across the fields. Cicadas sang their evening hymn, and the air smelled of hay, wood smoke, and the last breath of summer. Noah sat beside me, cross-legged on the porch steps, a notebook balanced on his knee. He was 17, curious, and too gentle for the world he was about to inherit. His eyes, wide and waiting, reminded me of my own once, before I learned what people were capable of hiding behind their faces. "You ever hear of a woman with two heads?" I asked, my voice low, steady. Noah blinked. "Like, literally?" I nodded. "Literally. Her name was Evelyn-Marie, and she married my father, not by love, not by choice, but by force." He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence between us was sacred. I looked out over the fields, remembering the way they used to look in 1952, before the Ellison name became a whisper in the town's throat, before my father stopped smiling, before I stopped believing in God. Back then, our house stood proud at the edge of the valley, whitewashed and wrapped in ivy. My father, Thomas Ellison, built it with his own hands after returning from the war. He was a quiet man, principled, with eyes that held the weight of things he never said. After my mother, Clara, died giving birth to me, he never looked at another woman. His grief was quiet, but it filled the house like smoke. He raised me alone, taught me how to read, how to pray, how to plant tomatoes. He never smiled much, but when he did, it felt like spring. I was 10 when Evelyn-Marie arrived. She came in a covered wagon, escorted by Pastor John and Sheriff Dale. The whole town gathered to see her. She wore a veil, but even that couldn't hide the truth. 2 heads, 1 body. Before Evelyn-Marie, before the veil and the whispers, there was my father, Thomas Ellison. He was a man carved from quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from shyness, but the kind that settles deep in the bones, like winter. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. People listened, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. He was born in 1915 in a farmhouse that no longer stands, the youngest of 5 and the only one who stayed. His brothers chased cities and fortunes. He stayed with the land. He believed in soil, in sweat, in the kind of work that made your hands ache and your heart steady. When the war came, he didn't hesitate. He enlisted, fought in Europe, and came back with a limp and a silence that never quite left him. He never spoke of what he saw, but sometimes when the wind howled through the valley, he'd stare out the window like he was waiting for something or someone to return. He met my mother, Clara, in 1940. She was a school teacher with ink-stained fingers and a laugh that could make birds pause mid-flight. They married in spring under a willow tree, with nothing but wildflowers and promises. She died 2 years later, giving birth to me. He never remarried, never courted, never even looked at another woman. Instead, he poured himself into raising me. He built me a swing from an old tire, taught me how to fish, read me poetry from books he kept hidden in the attic. He was a man of the land, yes, but also of words, quiet ones, heavy ones. Every Sunday he'd take me to church, not because he believed in the preacher's fire and brimstone, but because he believed in rhythm, in routine, in showing up. He'd sit in the back pew, hat in hand, eyes closed. I used to think he was praying. Later, I realized he was remembering. She arrived on a Sunday, the kind of day when the sky hangs low and the church bell rings like it's warning you. The wagon creaked into town just after morning service, pulled by 2 black horses with braided manes. Pastor John walked ahead, holding a silver cross high, while Sheriff Dale followed behind, his hand resting on his holster. The townsfolk gathered in silence, lining the dusty road like mourners at a funeral. I stood beside my father, clutching his sleeve, sensing something unnatural in the air. The wagon stopped in front of the church, and the linen curtain was drawn back. She stepped out slowly. Evelyn-Marie. She wore a veil, long and embroidered, hiding most of her face, but the shape beneath it was unmistakable. 2 heads, 1 body, 1 dress, 1 pair of shoes. Her posture was graceful, but her presence was jarring. Evelyn, on the left, tilted her head gently, her eyes soft and blue. Marie on the right stared straight ahead, her gaze sharp and unblinking. They spoke in turn. "I am Evelyn," said the left head. "I bring peace." "I am Marie," said the right. "I bring truth." The crowd gasped. Some crossed themselves. Others whispered prayers. Pastor John raised his voice. "She is the vessel, the prophecy fulfilled. She has seen visions of Thomas Ellison. He is chosen." My father didn't move. That afternoon, the town held a meeting. Pastor John declared the marriage necessary. Sheriff Dale confirmed the court's approval. My father stood, his voice low. "I do not consent," Pastor John smiled. "Consent is not required when destiny speaks." The next morning, Evelyn-Marie was given a room in the church. I watched her through the window, writing in 2 journals, one with each hand. Evelyn's handwriting was delicate. Marie's was jagged. They argued aloud, their voices clashing like thunder. I ran home. I didn't sleep. The wedding was held in the church where my parents once stood, beneath the same stained glass window that used to cast rainbows across my mother's dress. But this time, the colors felt colder. My father wore his best shirt, the one Clara had stitched before she died. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He simply stood beside Evelyn-Marie, his hands clenched, his eyes distant. Evelyn smiled softly, her gaze fixed on him. Marie didn't smile. She stared at the crowd like she was daring someone to object. Pastor John read from Revelation, his voice trembling with reverence. "2 shall become 1, he said, "and 1 shall carry the burden of many." Sheriff Dale stood nearby, arms crossed, revolver at his hip. My father didn't respond when asked if he accepted her. He just nodded. I wanted to scream, to run. But I was 10, and 10-year-olds don't stop prophecy. After the ceremony, Evelyn-Marie moved into our home. She brought a trunk full of lace, books, and strange herbs. She slept in my mother's room. My father moved into the barn. The house changed overnight. The air felt heavier. The walls seemed to lean inward. Even the light through the windows dimmed, as if the sun itself was unsure whether it should shine on us. Evelyn would hum while folding laundry. Marie would slam doors and mutter curses. They spoke to each other constantly, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in shouts. I'd hear them arguing through the walls, Evelyn pleading for calm, Marie demanding silence. My father stopped eating at the table. He'd take his plate to the barn, sit on a hay bale, and stare at the ground. I stopped asking him questions. One evening I found Evelyn-Marie slicing apples with 2 knives, 1 in each hand. Evelyn looked up and smiled. "Would you like some pie, Ruth?" Marie didn't look up. "She doesn't deserve pie." I backed away slowly, heart pounding. That night I dreamed of Clara. She stood in the garden, her face serene. She didn't speak. She just looked at me and vanished. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage, and Evelyn-Marie was always performing. One moment she'd be humming while folding laundry, her voice soft and sweet. The next, she'd slam the door so hard the windows rattled. Evelyn would ask me about school, offer to braid my hair, leave wildflowers on my windowsill. Marie would accuse me of lying, insult my handwriting, and stare at me like I was something she wanted to erase. They argued constantly, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in full-blown shouting matches. I'd hear them through the walls, Evelyn pleading for calm, Marie demanding silence. My father said nothing. He moved through the house like a ghost, sleeping in the barn, eating alone, staring at the tomato plants that refused to grow. One night I woke to laughter. I crept down the hallway and peeked into the living room. Evelyn-Marie sat in the armchair, reading 2 books, one in each hand. Evelyn giggled at a poem. Marie scoffed at a political essay. Their voices overlapped, clashing. I felt dizzy, like the world had tilted. I backed away, heart pounding. At school, I stopped talking. My teachers noticed. My friends drifted. Maggie asked me once, "Is it true your stepmother has 2 heads?" I didn't answer. What could I say? Yes, and one of them hates me. I began keeping a journal hidden beneath the floorboards. I wrote everything, the way Evelyn cried when Marie insulted her, the way my father flinched when Marie entered the room, the way I felt like a stranger in my own house. I wrote, "She's not one person, she's 2, and I don't know which one I'm supposed to love." One afternoon, Evelyn invited me to bake cookies. She wore a yellow apron and sang hymns while mixing the dough. Her smile was warm, her eyes kind. I almost forgot. Until Marie took over, she burned the cookies, threw the tray, screamed at me for distracting her. I ran to my room, locked the door, and cried until my throat ached. Willow Creek changed after Evelyn-Marie arrived. The town that once whispered behind closed doors now sang her praises in the open. Pastor John called her God's dual messenger. Sheriff Dale said she was proof of divine intervention. People came from neighboring counties to see her. Some brought gifts, others asked for blessings. A woman with 2 heads was no longer a curiosity. She was a miracle. I watched it all unfold from the edges. I saw how they looked at her with awe, how they looked at me with pity. I was the girl who lived with the chosen one, the girl who should be grateful, but I wasn't. At school, teachers asked me to share stories. At church, people asked if Evelyn-Marie had healed anyone. I lied. I said she was kind. I said she prayed for me. I said she made our home whole. But inside, I was unraveling. Evelyn was kind, yes. She'd leave notes on my pillow. "You are loved. You are seen." Marie would tear them up. She'd whisper things in the dark. "You're weak. You're nothing." They fought over me like I was a prize. My father stayed silent. He'd nod politely when people praised his wife. He'd shake hands, accept compliments, and then retreat to the barn. One Sunday, Pastor John asked Evelyn-Marie to speak. She stood at the pulpit, both heads raised. Evelyn spoke of peace. Marie spoke of judgment. The congregation wept. I sat in the back, fists clenched. I wanted to scream, to tell them what it was really like, the shouting, the fear, the way my father flinched when Marie entered the room. But I stayed quiet, because 10-year-olds don't challenge miracles. That night, Evelyn left a flower on my windowsill. Marie left a dead moth. I stared at them both, side by side, beauty and decay, kindness and cruelty. I didn't know which one to throw away. I didn't know which one to keep. I was 11 when I ran away. It wasn't planned. It wasn't brave. It was desperate. That morning, Evelyn had made me breakfast, pancakes shaped like hearts. Marie threw the plate against the wall. My father didn't flinch. He just picked up the pieces and swept them into the trash. I watched him, waiting for something, a word, a look, a sign that he still saw me, but he didn't. He just walked out to the barn like he always did. I packed a small bag, 2 books, a sweater, a jar of coins. I left a note beneath my pillow. "I'm not safe here." I walked to the bus station in town, head down, heart pounding. The clerk didn't ask questions. I bought a one-way ticket to Lexington. I'd heard there were doctors there, people who studied strange things, people who might understand Evelyn-Marie. The ride was quiet. I stared out the window, watching the fields blur into highways. I felt guilty. I felt free. I felt like I was floating. Lexington was loud, fast, unfamiliar. I wandered until I found a clinic with a sign that read, Neurological Research Center. I walked in, clutching my bag, and asked to speak with someone who understood people with 2 minds. They looked at me like I was lost. I was. But then a man stepped forward, Dr. Whitmore. He had kind eyes and a tired smile. I told him everything, about Evelyn, about Marie, about the way they fought, about the way my father disappeared into silence. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "She has polycephaly. It's real, rare, but real." I asked if they could be separated. He shook his head. "They are one, but they are not whole." I didn't cry. I just nodded. I thanked him and left. I sat on a bench outside, watching the city move around me. I felt small, I felt invisible, but I also felt something else, clarity. I returned to Willow Creek 2 days later. The bus ride felt longer than before, like the road itself was reluctant to bring me back. I held my bag close, the doctor's words echoing in my head. They are one, but they are not whole. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe that things would be different now that I understood. But understanding doesn't change reality. It only makes it harder to ignore. The house looked the same, white paint peeling, ivy climbing, porch sagging, but the air felt heavier. I stepped inside quietly. Evelyn was in the kitchen, humming. Marie was silent. My father was nowhere to be seen. Evelyn turned and smiled. "You're home." Marie didn't speak. I nodded, unsure what to say. I went to my room, unpacked slowly, and placed my journal back beneath the floorboards. That night, I lay awake listening to them argue. Evelyn wanted to know where I'd gone. Marie accused me of betrayal. My father didn't ask. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. The next morning, I found him in the barn, sitting beside the tomato plants. They were still dying. He looked older, smaller. I sat beside him. "I saw a doctor," I said. "She has polycephaly." He didn't react. "It's real, rare, but real." He nodded slowly. "I know." I stared at him. "You knew?" He didn't look at me. I knew something, enough to stay quiet. I wanted to scream, to shake him, but I didn't, because I understood now. He hadn't married Evelyn-Marie out of belief. He'd married her out of fear. The town still worshipped her. Pastor John called her a living parable. Sheriff Dale said she brought order. But inside our home, chaos reigned. Evelyn tried to reconnect. Marie grew colder. My father faded further. I began to write more. Not just what happened, but how it felt. The confusion, the isolation, the ache of loving someone who wasn't one person. I wrote, "I don't hate her, but I don't know how to love her." I watched Evelyn-Marie from a distance. I saw the way Evelyn's eyes softened when she looked at flowers. I saw the way Marie's jaw clenched when she heard laughter. They were trapped, and so was I. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was calm, the next it cracked open like a broken promise. Rain slammed against the windows. Thunder rolled through the valley. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching my journal, listening to the wind howl like it was mourning something. Evelyn-Marie was in the living room, pacing. Evelyn whispered prayers. Marie shouted curses. My father was in the barn, as always, pretending the storm wasn't happening. But inside the house, it was louder than anything outside. I crept down the hallway, drawn by the sound of Evelyn sobbing. She was curled on the couch, arms wrapped around herself. Marie was screaming at her. "You're weak! You let her run away! You let him ignore us!" Evelyn didn't respond. She just cried harder. I stepped into the room. Marie turned to me. "This is your fault." Evelyn looked up, eyes swollen. "Ruth, please go back to bed." I didn't move. I couldn't. Something was unraveling, and I needed to see it. Marie grabbed a lamp and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. Evelyn screamed. I ran to the kitchen, heart pounding, unsure what to do. I wanted to call someone. But who? Pastor John would say it was divine rage. Sheriff Dale would say it was none of his business. I was alone. I returned to the living room. Evelyn was on the floor, shaking. Marie was silent now, her face twisted in something I couldn't name. I knelt beside Evelyn. "Are you hurt?" She nodded. "Not outside." I helped her to her feet. Marie didn't speak again that night. She just stared out the window, watching the rain. My father came in hours later, soaked and silent. He looked at the broken lamp, at Evelyn's bruised arm, and then at me. "It's getting worse," he said. I didn't answer. I just nodded. That night, I wrote in my journal, "She's breaking, and if she breaks, we all do." My father stopped speaking the day after the storm. Not completely, but enough that the silence felt louder than words. He moved slower, ate less, spent longer hours in the barn, staring at the soil like it had betrayed him. I watched him from the porch, notebook in hand, trying to capture the shape of his silence. It wasn't just grief. It was surrender. Evelyn-Marie still moved through the house like a shifting wind. Evelyn tried to make peace, baking, cleaning, leaving notes. Marie grew colder, her voice sharper, her presence heavier. They rarely spoke to my father anymore. He rarely looked at them. One morning I found him sitting beside the tomato plants, his hands buried in the dirt. "They won't grow," he said softly. "They know something's wrong." I knelt beside him. "You're not wrong." He didn't respond. I wanted to ask him why he stayed, why he let them take over, but I already knew. He was tired, and tired men don't fight. They endure. That night, Evelyn left a poem on the kitchen table. Marie tore it in half. My father didn't react. He just swept the pieces into the trash. I began to write more, not just what happened, but how it felt. I wrote about the way my father's eyes used to light up when I read aloud, how they now looked dim, like a candle burned too long. I wrote, "He's still here, but he's not with us." The town still praised Evelyn-Marie. Pastor John said she was a bridge between worlds. Sheriff Dale said she brought balance. But inside our home, nothing was balanced. Everything leaned toward collapse. One evening I sat beside my father in the barn. The air smelled of hay and rust. I asked, "Do you regret it?" He didn't answer. I asked again, "Do you regret marrying her?" He looked at me, eyes hollow. "I regret surviving." I didn't speak. I just placed my hand over his. That night I wrote, "He didn't choose her. He chose silence, and silence is killing him." I found them by accident. A stack of letters hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the barn, wrapped in twine and stained with time. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just sweeping, trying to make sense of the silence. But when the board shifted under my foot, I knelt down and pried it loose. There they were, 27 letters, all addressed to Clara, my mother, all written after she died. I sat on the hay bale and read them one by one. My father's handwriting was steady, deliberate. Each letter began the same, "My dearest Clara," and each one carried a weight I hadn't known he was still holding. He wrote about me, about how he didn't know how to raise a daughter alone, about how he tried to braid my hair and failed, about how he read poetry aloud, hoping she could hear it from wherever she was. Then the letters changed. He wrote about Evelyn-Marie, about the day she arrived, about the fear in his chest, about the pressure from Pastor John, the threats from Sheriff Dale. He wrote, "I didn't choose her. I chose survival." He wrote, "I see Ruth slipping away, and I don't know how to hold her." He wrote, "I miss you more now than I did the day you left." I cried quietly, the barn swallowing my sobs. I had spent years resenting him for his silence, for his absence. But these letters were proof he hadn't disappeared. He had just buried himself beneath grief and duty. I placed the letters back where I found them, careful not to disturb their order. I didn't tell him I'd read them. I didn't need to. That night I sat beside him on the porch. He didn't speak, but he reached over and placed his hand on mine. It was enough. I wrote in my journal, "He loved her. He loves me. He just forgot how to say it." It was late when Evelyn knocked on my door. Not Marie, just Evelyn. Her voice was soft, almost afraid. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then nodded. She stepped inside, her hands trembling, her eyes red. Marie was quiet, retreated, sleeping, or simply choosing silence. Evelyn sat on the edge of my bed, clutching a folded piece of paper. "I want to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to listen." I didn't speak. I just waited. She unfolded the paper. It was a letter, not to me, not to my father, to herself. She read aloud, "I am Evelyn. I am kind. I am patient. I am not Marie, but I am not free." Her voice cracked. "I didn't choose this. I didn't ask to be born with her. I didn't ask to share my body, my thoughts, my life." I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not love, but recognition. She was trapped, just like me, just like my father. She continued, "Marie protects me. She fights for me, but she also hurts me. She says I'm weak, that kindness is a disease, that love is a lie." Evelyn looked at me. "I don't want to hurt you, Ruth. I never did." I swallowed hard. "Then why do you let her?" Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "Because I don't know how to stop her." We sat in silence. The house was quiet. My father was in the barn. Marie was absent. And for the first time, Evelyn was just Evelyn. She reached for my hand. I let her. Her grip was light, unsure. "I remember the day I met you," she said. "You were wearing a blue ribbon. You looked at me like I was a monster." I didn't deny it. "I was scared," I said. "I still am." Evelyn nodded. "Me too." That night I didn't write in my journal. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about her words, about the way she spoke to herself, about the way she lived in constant conflict. I didn't love her, but I didn't hate her either. I was beginning to understand that Evelyn wasn't the enemy. She was the echo of a life split in two. Marie rarely spoke to me directly. She preferred corners, mirrors, and silence. But one afternoon, she found me alone in the garden, pulling weeds from the tomato bed. Evelyn was asleep. My father was in town. Marie stood over me, her shadow long and sharp. "You think I'm evil," she said. I didn't answer. She crouched beside me, her voice low. "You think I ruin everything, that I hurt her, that I hurt you." I kept my eyes on the soil. "You do," I said. "You always do." She laughed, not loud, not cruel, just tired. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I was born second. I was born unwanted. She got the lullabies. I got the silence." I looked at her. For the first time, she wasn't angry. She was hollow. She cries, and people comfort her. I scream, and they call me a monster. Her eyes met mine. "Do you know what it's like to share a body with someone who hates you?" I didn't. But I was beginning to imagine. Marie plucked a dying leaf from the vine. I protect her. I fight for her. I keep her alive. But she resents me. She crushed the leaf in her fist. She wants to be loved. I want to survive. I stood slowly. "You don't have to hurt people to survive." Marie's jaw tightened. "You do when no one listens." We stared at each other. Two girls, two lives, two kinds of pain. I didn't forgive her, but I saw her, and sometimes that's enough. That night, Evelyn cried in her sleep. Marie didn't speak. My father sat on the porch, staring at the stars. I wrote in my journal, "Marie is not evil. She is fury. She is fear. She is the part of Evelyn that was never allowed to be soft." It started with whispers, quiet ones, traded over fences and under breath. Evelyn-Marie had once been the town's miracle. Now she was becoming its question. A child claimed she cursed his dog. A shopkeeper said she made the milk spoil. Pastor John dismissed it all, calling it faithless gossip. But gossip spreads faster than sermons. I watched it happen from the edges. The same people who once brought her gifts now crossed the street to avoid her. The same women who asked for blessings now clutched their children tighter when she passed. Marie noticed first. She grew louder, angrier. She shouted at strangers. She insulted the mailman. She accused the grocer of poisoning our bread. Evelyn tried to calm her, but her voice was drowned out. My father stayed silent. He didn't defend her. He didn't deny her. He simply faded further into the barn, as if distance could protect him from shame. I didn't speak either. I didn't know how. I didn't know if I wanted to. One afternoon, Evelyn came home crying. Marie was livid. "They're turning on us," she said. "They're showing their true faces." Evelyn whispered, "Maybe they're scared." Marie snapped, "They should be." That night I heard them arguing louder than ever. Evelyn begged for peace. Marie demanded revenge. My father didn't come inside. I sat in my room writing. She was never theirs. She was never ours. She was always something else. The next Sunday, Evelyn-Marie wasn't invited to church. Pastor John said the service was private. Sheriff Dale stopped waving when he drove by. The town that once called her divine now called her dangerous. I watched her shrink. Evelyn stopped singing. Marie stopped sleeping. My father stopped planting. I stopped hoping. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew something was coming, something sharp, something final. I wrote in my journal, "They built her up like a monument. Now they're waiting to watch her fall." It began with silence. Not Marie's usual withdrawal, not Evelyn's quiet sadness, something deeper. Evelyn-Marie stopped speaking for hours at a time. Her eyes would glaze over, her hands would tremble. She'd forget where she was. At first we thought it was exhaustion. Then she collapsed in the kitchen. My father carried her to bed, his arms shaking. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He just sat beside her, watching both faces sleep. The doctor came from Lexington, not Dr. Whitmore, someone younger, colder. He examined her, asked questions, took notes. "Neurological degradation," he said. "The strain of dual consciousness. Her body is failing." Evelyn wept. Marie cursed. My father nodded, as if he'd known all along. I stood in the doorway, unsure what to feel. Relief? Guilt? Fear? The town didn't know. Pastor John still preached her divinity. Sheriff Dale still nodded politely. But inside our home, the miracle was dying. Evelyn grew weaker. Marie grew bitter. They argued less. They slept more. My father moved back into the house, sleeping in a chair beside their bed. I watched him age in days. His hands, once strong, now trembled when he poured tea. His voice, once steady, now cracked when he said my name. One night, Evelyn asked me to read to her a poem, something soft. I chose one about rivers and memory. She smiled. Marie rolled her eyes. "You always liked pretty lies," she said. Evelyn whispered, "They make the pain quieter." I didn't know what to say. I just kept reading. That week, Evelyn stopped eating. Marie refused help. My father begged them both. I wrote in my journal, "She's fading, and he's breaking, and I'm watching it all." I sat with her one morning, brushing her hair. Evelyn whispered, "I'm scared." Marie said nothing. I held her hand. "I know." She looked at me, eyes glassy. "Will you remember me?" I nodded. "Both of you." Marie scoffed. Evelyn smiled, and for a moment they were quiet, not whole, but close. Evelyn died first. It happened quietly, in the early hours of a gray morning. I was sitting beside her bed, watching the light shift across the ceiling. Her breathing slowed, then stopped. Marie screamed, not aloud, but inside. Her face twisted, her eyes wide with something I couldn't name. My father entered the room moments later. He didn't ask. He didn't speak. He just knelt beside Evelyn's side and pressed his forehead to her hand. Marie lingered for 3 more days. She refused food, refused sleep, refused to speak. Her body remained alive, but her spirit was unraveling. On the 3rd night, she whispered one word, "alone." Then she was gone. Her eyes dimmed. Her mouth fell silent. The house exhaled. We didn't hold a funeral right away. Pastor John offered a service. Sheriff Dale offered a plot. My father declined both. She wasn't theirs, he said. She was never theirs. Instead, we buried her in the garden, beneath the willow tree where he once married Clara. No hymns, no speeches, just silence. My father placed a single tomato on the grave. I placed my journal, closed, unread. The town didn't ask questions. They moved on quickly, as towns do. The miracle had ended. The whispers faded. The pews filled again. Pastor John preached about humility. Sheriff Dale smiled more often, but our house remained quiet. My father stopped going to the barn. I stopped writing. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was hollow. One evening, I found my father sitting on the porch staring at the horizon. "She was two people," he said, "but she died alone." I nodded. "You loved her?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I understood now. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just staying, even when it hurts. That night, I dreamed of Evelyn. She was standing in the garden, her face peaceful. Marie stood beside her, silent. They didn't speak. They just looked at me. I woke with tears on my cheeks. I wrote in a new journal. She was never mine to love, but I will remember her. The house felt different after she was gone. Not lighter, not heavier, just still. The kind of stillness that settles after a long storm, when the wind has stopped but the damage remains. My father moved slower. He didn't speak much, but he stayed inside now. He made tea in the mornings. He sat at the table. He looked at me when I entered the room. That was new. I spent hours in the garden watching the willow tree sway. Beneath it lay Evelyn-Marie, 2 minds, 1 body, 1 grave. I didn't visit often, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who was never just one person? What do you say to someone you never learned how to love? One afternoon, I found my father in the attic, sorting through old boxes. He handed me a photograph, Clara, smiling, holding a baby me. "She would have liked you," he said. I nodded. I think I would have liked her. We didn't talk about Evelyn-Marie, not directly, but she lingered in every silence, in every glance, in every memory we didn't share. I started writing again, not in the old journal, in a new one, clean pages, no floorboards. I wrote about Evelyn's kindness, about Marie's fury, about the way they fought, about the way they tried. I wrote, "She was never mine, but she was part of me." My father read a few pages. He didn't comment, but he placed a bookmark between them. That was enough. The town moved on. Pastor John preached about humility. Sheriff Dale retired. The whispers faded. The miracle was forgotten. But I remembered. I remembered the way Evelyn braided my hair, the way Marie stared through me, the way my father held both their hands when the end came. I didn't love her, but I didn't hate her. I lived with her. I learned from her. And now I carry her, not as a wound, not as a weight, but as a story. I married at 24. His name was Daniel. He was kind, quiet, and nothing like my father. He asked questions. He listened. He didn't vanish into silence when things got hard. I met him at the library, where I worked part-time shelving books and avoiding eye contact. He asked me about poetry. I told him I preferred prose. He said, "Prose is just poetry that's tired." I laughed. That was rare back then. We married in autumn, beneath the same willow tree where Evelyn-Marie was buried. My father stood beside me, older now, softer. He didn't speak during the ceremony, but afterward he hugged me longer than he ever had. Daniel knew about Evelyn-Marie. I told him everything, not all at once, in pieces, in fragments. He didn't flinch, he didn't judge. He just held my hand and said, "You survived." But survival isn't the same as healing. For years I kept Evelyn-Marie out of my stories. I wrote about gardens, storms, silence, but never her. I was afraid that remembering would reopen something I'd barely stitched shut. Daniel encouraged me gently. "You don't have to forgive her," he said, "but you can understand her." I started writing again, not in secret, not in fear. I wrote about Evelyn's softness, Marie's rage, my father's silence, my own confusion. I wrote, Love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's jagged, sometimes it's survival. Daniel and I had one child, a boy. We named him Noah. He grew up curious, thoughtful, always asking questions. When he turned 17, I told him the story, the whole story. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look away. He just listened, notebook in hand, like he was gathering pieces of me I'd forgotten. That night he said, "You didn't love her, but you didn't abandon her either." I nodded. Sometimes staying is the only love we know. He wrote that down. The porch hasn't changed much. The wood still creaks. The swing still groans. The fields still stretch wide and golden. But I've changed. I'm older now, slower, softer. Noah sits beside me, notebook in hand, eyes full of questions. He's 17, just like I was when I stopped being afraid to remember. I look at him and see pieces of Daniel, pieces of myself, and, strangely, pieces of Evelyn-Marie. "I want to write it all down," he says, "not just the facts, the feelings." I nod. That's the only way it matters. He asks if I ever forgave her. I pause. Forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just letting go. He writes that down. I watch the wind move through the trees, remembering the way Evelyn used to hum, the way Marie used to glare, the way my father used to disappear into silence. I tell Noah about the letters in the barn, about the poems Evelyn left, about the night Marie whispered alone. I tell him about the tomato on the grave, about the journal I buried, about the new one I started. He listens. He doesn't interrupt. He's gathering me piece by piece. I feel lighter. The town has changed. New faces, new stories. The church still stands, but Pastor John is gone. Sheriff Dale is a name in a dusty file. No one talks about Evelyn-Marie anymore. But I do. I talk about her because she mattered, because she was real, because she was two people trying to survive in one life, and because survival, even when messy, deserves to be remembered. Noah asks if I ever wish things had been different. I smile. Of course, but wishing doesn't rewrite the past. It only teaches us how to tell it better. He closes his notebook. I think I'm ready. I nod. Then the story is yours now. The sun dips low, the porch creaks, and for the first time in years, I feel something close to peace. The sun was setting again, same porch, same swing, same field stretching into gold. But this time Noah sat with the notebook closed. He wasn't writing anymore. He was listening. I could feel it, not just with his ears, but with something deeper, the kind of listening that turns stories into inheritance. I've told you everything, I said. The truth, the pain, the parts I never said aloud. He nodded. I know. I looked out at the willow tree, its branches swaying gently. Beneath it lay Evelyn-Marie. Beneath it lay the years we never understood. You'll tell it differently, I said. You'll make it yours. He smiled. I'll make it honest. That mattered more than anything. I reached for his hand. It was warm, steady. You'll meet people who carry more than one voice, I said. Some will be kind. Some will be cruel. Some will be both. He didn't flinch. Like Evelyn-Marie, I nodded. Exactly like her. I paused. And some will be like me, still learning how to love what they couldn't understand. The wind picked up. The porch creaked. A bird landed on the railing, then flew off again. I thought about my father, about Clara, about the letters in the barn, about the tomato on the grave, about the silence that taught me how to listen. I thought about Evelyn's lullabies, Marie's fury, Daniel's patience, Noah's questions. I had carried all of them, and now I was letting go. You'll write it better than I did, I said. You'll see things I couldn't. Noah looked at me, eyes full of something I couldn't name. I'll remember you, he said, all of you. I smiled. Then the story was worth telling. The sun dipped below the horizon. The fields turned to shadow. And for the first time, I didn't feel haunted. I felt whole.